It's extremely important to include gender in both research and policy in climate change and agriculture because of the huge impacts. Climate change undermines poor livelihoods. Who picks up the pieces? It has a huge gender differentiated impact because the roles of women and men are so different, and by and large it affects women more and in a more disproportionately bad way. And so it really is important, and it also is important because at local level women are very often saving their communities, coming together in a network, working to try to adapt and to be more resilient. They're not just victims, and I think we should be very careful about that. They're also actors for change in their communities.
I think we need to do a better job of understanding the underlying cultural norms, the underlying political system that affects women's access to all of these resources. Oftentimes as researchers we tend to just look at the technology or the narrow issue that we want to try to address without looking at the broader context.
It's increasingly understood that to address resilience to climate change and water shocks in the landscape, you need to not only understand the biophysical world, but also how society interacts with that. And part of society is the gender component and the power relationships. So it's important to understand how the biophysical world and society interact, and then to design resilient solutions based on that.
As climate is changing, we are coming up with innovative climate-smart agriculture practices and technologies, which is very crucial for the farmers to adopt so as they can mitigate their risk because of climate, and they enable them to adapt to climate change. Now, farmers are themselves very new to these technologies, and they want to have discussions with people in their households. But back in the homes, the women themselves are not aware. And therefore, during our field visits, we have realized that men want the women to be equally informed about these new informations, about new agricultural technologies and practices. And that's how it became important for gender to be incorporated when we're talking about climate-smart agriculture practices and technologies.
I think one of the biggest myth that is out there is that when you give all the agricultural productivity inputs to women, they will be able to produce a lot or even better than men. But we know from recent findings that this is actually not true, because even when women have access to these productive inputs, there are still so many challenges they face that prevent them from having as optimal results from their inputs, which is quite problematic and needs to be addressed.
Well, I think we have been hearing a lot today about the need to disaggregate women and the need to not consider women as a homogeneous group, but as a many different kind of women. And including these many different kind of women is many different kind of young women that have different needs than the old women. Same with young men. I think we really need to focus in their needs and their aims, their needs, and how to empower them and how to encourage them to continue in agriculture, because we are currently seeing that they are leaving a lot agriculture and they are not interested in farming anymore.
I think we all have to do more. And those of us who have access to decision-making or tables have to create space. In my foundation, we're committed to creating space when women leaders meet at a high level for women at grassroots. We did that recently in Chile. There was a high-level women's meeting, and the day before we had a round table. We brought 6 other of those women with myself to listen to these women who are experts, because they deal with drought, they deal with water shortage, they deal with flooding, they deal with all these issues as a reality in their lives, and they know what it is that will make a difference to them, and we have to listen to them. And I think every woman in a position of leadership should ask herself, how can I make more space for women at grassroots who know what the problems are? I should be listening to them. How can I give them space at the table? How can I let them have their voice heard directly?
What I would like to see is that gender equity doesn't become a standalone issue or an additional component of all kinds of programs for food security, climate change adaptation. It's just a normal part of how you tackle assessing vulnerability in the landscape and designing solutions. So we need both men and women, boys and girls to take part, and it's just common sense to analyse the problem and design the solution with those different roles in mind.